Testing, testing. Testing sound. Old random scrub is the keen one. Alright, I think it's working. Alright, welcome to CanHammer TV, everybody. Your source for 40K from the Great White North. It's not a new haircut, it is my usual haircut. I just am too lazy to get it cut very often. And yesterday I finished work early, so I cut my hair. So there you go. It's my usual haircut, so look smart. Welcome everybody to CanHammer TV, Custodes Tactica episode 11. And I think it's actually 13 if you count some of the interviews, but I didn't count those as episodes. So it's 11, but there may be actually 13 episodes. And tonight's episode is going to be a good one. It's going to be on our statistics, where we stand at the moment. It's going to be on some predictions for Psychic Awakening. And it's going to be on thoughts on the seemingly ever-changing ITC missions. If you don't know, the ITC missions have literally changed a couple of hours ago. And so I will try and keep it as up-to-date as possible. And we'll talk about it in terms of how it comes in terms of ITC missions. If you didn't catch the podcast on Monday, I was joined by Diogo and we talked about the ITC missions in general. Tonight we'll focus on how Custodes adapts to the new ITC missions. So pretty topical subject right now, and so we're going to talk about that as well. Before we get started, though, welcome to everybody watching. Welcome to those watching on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. Thank you very much for supporting. Big shout out to the CanHammer Discord, which is now hopping. Lots of people talking about all sorts of things, not just Custodes, but of course the Custodes Collective is there, and the new home of the CanHammer ITC team chat as well. So big shout out to the Discord, which is a source of much good information these days. I want to shout out our big sponsors, all our patrons, our subscribers and followers. Thank you very much for keeping us on the air. And yeah, we couldn't do this without you, so thank you very much. No new news for Capital City Bloodbath at this time. We're having our big meeting next week where we were going to decide our go live date and all the events and all that stuff. So stay tuned. August 14th, 15th, and 16th. Mark those dates off to be in Ottawa for the biggest event in Canada. That's right. So mark those dates off. CanHammer Team Tournament post-event surveys have gone out. You should have received it by email if your email was in BCP. It's the only way we can really track people is through BCP emails. So should have received a copy of the survey. Please fill it out. Be as honest as you like. Be constructive. And let us know, because we always want to try and improve our events. So do fill in, take a few minutes just to fill in the survey. It really does not take long. I've done it myself. I wrote it. And it really helps us to incorporate feedback from those events. Before we get started, tomorrow night is my first game. Not my first game, actually. My first game with my current iteration Eldar. I'm playing Eldar, Seer Council, Shining Spears, Harlequin's list versus Jean and his new Guard and Blood Angels list, which looks pretty nasty. So he'll be bringing some of the new Guard stuff to play, and I'll be bringing some of the old Eldar stuff to play, and we're going to have hopefully a good game. I'm gonna have to read the books again. I've got them stacked over there. I need like 4 books just to play this army, and so we'll hopefully be good to go. Next week we're gonna get Custodes on with either a meme list or a more serious revised list for current ITC missions, depending on what the current ITC missions are at the time. It's continuously changing, so we will be doing that next week, so stay tuned for that schedule. Hobby-wise, I'm about to spray the main color yellow on my Eldar bikes, so a bit nervous. I did not trust my skills last night and spent a lot of time masking just to do the some of the shadow like undercoat. So, but it looks okay with the magenta under the yellow. It's gonna look sweet, so hopefully it's gonna be good. And if it isn't, I tried my best. I've literally been planning this step for like 4 weeks. It's been crazy. I also received some new toys today. I was very bad and I ordered an Aries, and I just actually, it's grown on me. When I first saw it, I thought it was kind of stupid looking, but actually it's grown on me, and I actually like it better than the Orion now that I have both. And the Orion is just chunky and kind of flat, whereas the Aries has got a little bit of speed look to it. So I got one. It is ready to be washed, and then we're gonna get that, and it will be a possible member of my stud or snotling list, depending on whether or not we have our book by then, and whether or not I feel like playing meme or feel like playing hardcore Custodes. So we'll see how it goes, but hopefully we can get that painted up before end of April. And that's about it in terms of news. So probably what we're going to do is we're going to dive right into episode 11. So the first thing we're going to talk about is where we are right now. And by right now, I mean kind of post LVO, before the ITC missions, new missions came out last week. So that kind of lull post LVO period where you're just waiting for the missions to change. And so I got my man Peter the Falcon from 40K Stats Center, of course. Check it out, 40kstats.com. He got me all the stats he could on Custodes leading up to the LVO and at the time and after the LVO. So we're going to talk about some of those now. If you're a pure Custodes player, you probably will not be surprised by any of these statistics. In fact, it may depress you a little bit. So get your medications ready. But at least the upside is that you can't go down any more than this. And if we take some encouragement from what the Grey Knights have become, basically the next boogeyman army from what I hear, and if we take encouragement from how good other armies are going to become as well once people have figured them out, Dark Angels, Thousand Suns, Chaos again, Tau, then I think we have lots to look forward to. So let's not be too depressed. Let's hope for the future, and let's have a look at some of these numbers. So Peter says, and of course Peter's is a Custodes guy too, so this is depressing for him as well, although he's been playing more Blood Angels recently. So since the Iron Hands release and the early Psychic Awakenings, we've been on a general decline. We were pretty good from the summer before people really started to figure out Marines, sort of into the fall, maybe early winter. And we were sitting at a win rate of about 50.8%, which is pretty good. If you want your armies to sit at about around, the ideal is all armies sit at 50%, but that's not going to be the case. But 50% is pretty good, and there were a few lists, mostly the mech lists and maybe Eric's list, that sort of gave us a T-whip of 3.73%. What is T-whip? T-whip is basically a statistic that they made up in terms of number of rounds before you lose your first game. Okay, so a T-whip of like 2. Okay, so I'll go on. So our average first loss was 2.05, so we would not lose until the second round, which is generally where you want the factions to be balanced, with a T-whip of 3.73% compared to the rest of the meta at 2.78%. So we're doing okay. Then that was already down, though, from the heyday of the Caladius over the spring and summer, when due to the triple Caladius lists that were just over 6% of the meta at the time. They were everywhere. There was a 55% win rate and a 12% T-whip, which is crazy. It's like 3 times better than before the Caladius got nerfed. And then since then, though, and going in towards LVO, there's been on a sharp decline. And these are stats from about 7,000 games, he says. Our win rate has dropped to about 41%. And that's over 230 games played. And our T-Whip is now 0%. This means that nobody has gone 4-0 at a GT or major without taking a first loss. And the average first loss is 1.56, which means 1.5 rounds. So generally, you might win your first round, but generally not. So that's pretty bad. And he says this is quote unquote really bad. So definitely is dropped a long way from where we were before. And this is not surprising. Of course, he gives some reasons like matchups and stuff like that, which is completely understandable. We have in those games apparently, let's see, post Space Marines, post Psychic Awakening, Craft Worlds, and because of Tau, Custodes are 15-29 against Marines. So yeah, and we are 4-17 against Eldar. Yeah, we always have been, and 3-10 against Tau. Even Necrons have been beating us, and I have experienced that firsthand. So Necrons with the classic Necron list of the flyers and the Doomsday Arcs and the Destroyers really just kind of kick our butts. So that's what I got from Peter. So that's kind of where we were heading into this week, and not surprising at all, actually. Since the LVO, we have had one third place Custodes performance from Ryan Snyder, and he piloted a mech Custodes list to third place. So Ares, triple Cladius, triple Pallas, some characters, and that's about it. And a Dreadnought, Achilles Dreadnought. So so I still think that if you want to do the best, you probably need to play a full mech list like that, or be really good at playing a denial list like Bridgers, with the double battalion and as many 3-up invulns as you can fit in. I think those are kind of the two lists that will do the best right now. But we will see how we feel after we look at the ITC missions. Okay. Now, if people have questions about any of those statistics, please post in the chat and we will talk about it. Okay, where is this? Just trying to pull up my predictions here. Okay, I don't know where it's gone. I'll get it off my phone. All right. So I made Bobby Halls, welcome. So I made a little predictions for our Psychic Awakening book based on a bit of wish listing, what I feel would be reasonable ways of getting us up to scratch a little bit, and based on rules that we've already seen in other books. So there's precedent for rules. Everyone's wish listing crazy stuff that nobody's ever seen. And so I made a little predictions wish list, and I've pinned it to the Custodes Collective chat. So if you're in that Discord, just go up to the pins and you'll find it there. If you're not in the Discord, then you really got to check out the Discord. There's a link there, or if the link doesn't work, let me know. Chris Musso, welcome. Anything on combined SOS and Custodes? So I think right now there's nothing, but we're going to talk about in a second what I think might happen. I don't think there's any Sisters of Silence statistics at the moment because you can't really play them as a stand right now. They don't have an HQ or anything. Georgie G, you're famous. Georgie G is famous. Okay, so my predictions. Here we go. So first of all, in terms of army rules, so I think their options are that like Shadow Keepers and Solar Watch and all these kinds get like a chapter tactic, but I don't think that's going to happen because we don't really have enough of those and we don't have a lot of models. We're not a very big book. I think what we're going to get is what the Grey Knights got, which is like their tides. We're going to get an overarching rule or doctrine that you can use and perhaps a selection of them, maybe 3 to 5, and then you can choose one and there are certain ways to switch it up. So I've predicted that they're going to be called martial disciplines or martial something or battle disciplines or something like that. Maybe 3 to 5 of them, half of them will be defensive and half of them will be offensive. And I think that perhaps the new HQ, this Valyrian guy, or who I call Christopher Walken Custodes, is going to have some kind of rule that will allow us to maybe change or alter or do something with this new battle discipline. That's what I think anyway. It'd be very disappointing if this new guy is just like another shield captain with funky hair. That would be very disappointing, but stranger things have happened. So I think we're going to get something like that. And sky's the limit about kind of things we could get. In terms of defensive ones, I'm thinking I would like to see something that is similar to Sisters in terms of ignoring AP, ignoring -1, maybe even -1 and -2 would be very nice. That would really go a long way with helping us survive this current meta. All the low strength, high volume, and ridiculous AP shooting. Now, I haven't seen 0 AP in so long. Everything's just getting -1 and -2, and 2 armor is not what it used to be. So it would be really nice if we could ignore at least 1 AP, maybe even -2 AP. So it might be something like that. It might be some kind of damage mitigation, so -1 damage or something like that. It might be something that gives us like a feel no pain or at least increases our mortal wound feel no pain to 5 up and maybe to all mortals, not just psychic mortals. That would be something easy to do. There may be a doctrine that gives us more toughness. Maybe +1 toughness might help a little bit, although it's probably not going to be a huge factor. And the dream is something crazy like -1 to wound. Army-wide would be gross, really good. +1 save, so +1 to our invul, so army-wide 3+ to a max of 3+ would be really nice. And actually that's not going to make us that much harder to kill. It will really help, but it's not as broken as people think it would be, just as Bridger. So I think those are some options that are already precedents in other books that we could be getting. Offensive wise, some people have mentioned that we might get bolter discipline. I think it's unlikely. We don't really need bolter disciplines. We're not really Marines. We don't really have Marine bolters. So I think it's unlikely that we get bolter discipline, but maybe something like that, or some way of giving us some extra AP on spears or axes. So everybody's getting extra -1 AP everywhere. So it's not hard to think that we might get some extra AP there. I personally would love some kind of rule that makes all my D3 2 damage. Please. 3 damage would be great, but let's be reasonable. 2 damage would be amazing to just smooth out the ridiculous D3 variability. So like a doctrine that gives us 2 damage instead of D3 would be so sweet, or maybe D3 +1 or reroll D3. I mean, that would be sweet. So good. Or maybe a doctrine that turns our bolters into assault weapons or something like that. So there are a few things they could do to make us more offensive. I don't really think we need to be that much offensive. When we can get there and we can survive, we are a pretty offensive army. But the D3 thing really just kills me, and we need to be tougher. So hopefully the defensive ones are going to be good. So that's what I think is going to happen in terms of like army-wide like rules or doctrines. I don't think we have enough there to give us like a 2 pages of choose your own and make your own. That would be sweet, but I'm not sure if that's really the flavor that they would give to us. I doubt it really. So yeah. Chris Musso, how about immune to morale? Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to not have to take morale. It doesn't happen that often anyway, but yeah, so, that might be something that could sneak in there fairly easily. Okay, this is the hot topic. I think that we will be getting a Talons part of the supplement, not just Custodes, so we will have access to Sisters of Silence. And it kind of makes sense because we're getting this new HQ as well as what looks like an HQ Sisters model. Of course, we don't know she's an HQ, maybe she's just an elite or something. But assuming she's an HQ, that would mean that there must be some way of playing them instead of having multiples of her, because I'm assuming she's going to be unique. So they may allow us to take Sisters as a Talons thing. Now, they might give us separate detachments, but I suspect what they're going to do is actually just allow us to take the various Sister squads as troops, and that they do not break our keywords. So we can just take them as troops instead of the Guardians. That would be the easiest way to do it without doing anything else and making special detachments or anything like that. GW stated she was an HQ. Okay, cool. So that would be cool. Obviously, with an HQ there, they might get a detachment. They could take a Vanguard or something like that. But I think they will allow us to take Sisters as troops and obviously take the Rhinos and stuff like that without breaking our thing. I hope that's the case. I mean, if we have to take them as a separate detachment, that may be reasonable, but I think something like that's going to happen. So these two new HQs, Christopher Walken HQ and the new Sisters of Silence HQ, we don't have no idea what they're going to be. Hopefully they're going to be good. Just looking at him, he just looks like he's wearing normal armor and he's got a normal Guardian Spear. So he must have some other ability that makes him special. He's unlikely going to be like 7 wounds or anything because he's just got normal Guardian armor on. So probably he's going to be 5 wounds, 2s, all the usual stuff. Maybe he's going to have something that lets us use his leadership, and then, as I said before, maybe he's going to have an ability to influence the new martial disciplines or whatever. Maybe he'll give us full rerolls. Who knows? But there's potential there. I have no idea what the Sister HQ is going to do. No idea. So that is definitely something. I think we're going to get a page of new relics and warlord traits, the usual stuff. In terms of what these can be, who knows? I mean, sky's the limit. Maybe something to increase the range of heroic interventions. I mean, there's so many possibilities. I'm not going to list all the things down, but we're probably going to get more relics and new warlord traits. I would really love more relics for the Vexilla. It would just be very cool to have like different banners, better than the ones we have now. That would be really cool and might give us a lot more play. Relic bike, another relic bike, maybe, or another relic Terminator armor, or maybe a relic axe or something that has not D3 damage. Who knows? But yeah, it'd be nice. Okay, I don't think there's going to be no Forge World in this book, obviously, and I don't think there's going to be rules in there specifically interacting with Forge World units. However, I'm hopeful that they will make things generic so that we can use our Forge World units, So, for example, instead of writing Alaris, I hope they put Terminators or stuff like that. So hopefully they have our Forge World rules in mind while they were writing this book, since they did write the Forge World rules. So I'm hopeful for that, although I don't feel like there's going to be direct call-outs between the two. Now, what would be awesome was that all the Forge World datasheets ended up in this book. That would be awesome, but I don't think that's going to happen. Bobby Hall's flat 4 against demons. Well, that's not our job. We're not demon fighters. That's Grey Knights, right? So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get flat 4, period. It'd be nice if we got flat 2, that would be nice. Thurgood 1000 would be nice if there was something for dreadnoughts. Yeah, well, in the Codex, there aren't really any dreadnoughts. There's just this one dread with the stupid assault cannon, and that's it. And as I said, I don't think they're going to be integrating with the Forge World directly. So I don't think the Dreadnoughts will get anything specifically in this book. Okay. Bunch of stratagems. So obviously we are going to be getting a bunch of stratagems, maybe a couple of pages of stratagems. There's lots of potentials of stratagems we could get. Hopefully some will be defensive and some will be offensive. Just throwing out there some of the kinds of stratagems that I think we might see or would like to see. Some stratagem affecting D3 damage. If they don't give that to us as a rule, they need to give us a stratagem that turns D3 into 2 or D3 into 3 or D3 plus 1 or reroll D3, something to kick the ass of D3 damage. That's gotta be. So either a rule or a stratagem. Please, GW, do something about that. I think bikes will get a stratagem or some stratagems regarding movement shenanigans. So either fall back and charge or something Eldari, who knows, or advance and charge or advance and shoot and charge, something like that. I'm hoping that we see something like that for bikes just to improve their utility for 90 points. I would really love to see, and it's super fluffy and it's possible, but would be a new rule, the return of like the 7th edition like block rule or some kind of a parry rule or something like that, maybe as a stratagem that maybe reduces AP or reduces damage in that phase or something like that kind of is damage reduction. That, like these guys are just blocking stuff. If they're using spears, your opponent gets -1 damage or -1 AP or something like that. Some kind of block or parry stratagem would be really fluff, take us back to 7th, and would be really cool. So that would be sweet. It would be nice if wardens, spitballing here, maybe they got some kind of a wound passing mechanism for HQs. I know they guard prisoners, but they could guard the HQs as well, and they're the guys with the Feel Pain. And maybe a stratagem that increases the Feel Pain to 5 up for a phase, something like that. I wish that would make wardens way better if they had a 5 up Feel Pain. And generally we don't really care about protecting characters and stuff. They don't die very often, but like if wardens could increase their 6 up to a 5 up, that would be pretty sweet. So hopefully we'll see something like that. If we do get access to sisters, they're obviously going to come with at least a few stratagems, one of which might be a straight up deny, like a 4+ to deny sort of stratagem. That would be very nice. They already are pretty anti-psyker, which would really help us, especially against this Grey Knights madness. But they're going to get some stratagems, probably anti-psyker type stratagems, which would be nice. So if we do get sisters, we're going to get a few stratagems for them. I would love to see a stratagem that allows dreadnoughts to move and shoot without penalty. And that it is going to be generic dreadnought keyword, which will allow us to use it on Forge World dreadnoughts. I think that would be really nice, not something that we don't see every army have these days, and I think that would be really sweet. Chris Musso, you'd like to see more shots on the Venatari? Yes, for sure. But as I said, I don't think you're going to be changing any data sheets, and there will not be stuff in this book specifically for Forge World units. But I think, as I said, if they can make the Dreadnought stratagem move and shoot without penalty for all Dreadnoughts, then that would be sweet. And that would really make a big difference to the old Telemon. Rest in peace, Telemon. there's probably, hopefully, we see a stratagem to improve our mortal wound psychic protection. So 6 up to a 5 up, feel no pain. That would be a fairly easy stratagem to give us and allow us to be a little bit more psychic defensive. And I would really love to see a +1 save stratagem for a phase. Unit gets +1 save to a max of 3 plus invuln. That would be so good. So either we see an army-wide rule, or I think we'll more likely see a stratagem that lets us increase our save. That would be ace. Okay, well, that's all I had for predictions. Let me know if people had any other predictions that they thought might happen within reason. You know, we all have wish lists, obviously, but yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go on to ITC. All right, so the ITC missions have changed. In case you've been living under a rock, ITC missions have changed for 2020. There are lots of changes, and some are very good. Most of them are very good. Some are less good. And so what we're talking about tonight is how Custodes fares with the new missions and how we can adapt our lists and our playstyle, if that. First of all, overall, the missions now seriously favor board control. That was just adjusted a little bit today, which we'll talk about later. But if you have a board control type army, either in terms of lots of bodies or good board presence with hard to kill units, then you're going to do very well. And a large horde of models will easily score probably all their secondaries by second or third turn now, easily, and then just outlast you and score bonus on most missions. So it's really become favored to the board control army that pushes out a little bit and controls the middle of the table. Generally, the missions are discouraging sitting back in the castle now. A lot of the things involve you to go into the midfield at least, so that is probably good. Without the ability to seize and with guaranteed first or second turn, there is now opportunity for Alpha Strike hardcore. You know you're going first, no chance of seizing. If you're an Alpha Strike army, you're going to go for it, and so that can be pretty scary. It is already kind of bad. This kind of just makes it worse because now you have no fear of getting seized on. Still, though, the emphasis on the advantage lies, all things being equal, with going second in ITC still because of end-of-round primaries. And so it's still very advantageous to go second, and then you deploy second as well, and you know where everything is going to be, and there's no chance for anything to get mixed up. So it's still an advantage there, but the Alpha Strike is going to be more powerful. So be aware. Generally, you should be careful designing your lists to focus too much on secondaries. You should never trade getting a secondary point for not getting primary. Primaries are more important than secondaries. That's why they're called primaries. And so you should just be careful of trying to design or in-game go for too many secondaries at the expense of getting the primary. Don't forget, you got to kill something every turn. You got to hold every turn. So just be careful of that when you're looking at these missions where the primary is not changed, but the secondaries are all over the place, and don't over-design to just focus on secondaries. Because even if you get your secondaries, you haven't stopped your opponent from getting their secondaries, so that's not really helping you. Whereas if you kill more and hold more, those are 2-point swings, and so those can be important. So yeah, don't trade secondaries for primaries. Okay, so those are kind of general thoughts on the new missions. In terms of specifics, okay, so attacker, defender. So now the first roll-off is to see who is the attacker and the defender. Defender will choose deployment zone after rolling for deployment and can re-roll the deployment. So this is good for us. There are generally, depending on the kind of list you play, you generally don't want Dawn of War or Pointy Dawn of War. So now you have an opportunity, if you get that, to not have that. And so that's good. So, re-rolling the deployment allows you to avoid the really bad deployment, but doesn't allow you to try and get the one you really want. So keep that in mind, but it is a useful thing to have. And you're going second, so you can hide. So that's a big thing. If you're the attacker, you're going first. You have to go first. Nobody's going to seize on you, so you can play accordingly. So that is a big thing now, and I think that probably it probably doesn't affect us too much. We were never an alpha strikey army. We don't really have an alpha strike, so we all tend to deploy defensively regardless. So this change probably doesn't affect us too much, except that if we are going to go second, we know it's all complete deployment now, so we can tell exactly how we can hide. So if you re-roll into the same deployment, then you use the same. Then that's unlucky for you, Sergeant Tasty Cakes. So yeah, so I think this does help us a little bit as the defender to know you're going to be the defender and to deploy entirely your whole army second. So I think that's fine. So this is fine. So the no seize is fine. As we said on the other podcast, I think seize is a weird mechanic, and that's fine. So we'll see how it goes. So the next change is that after your deployment, then the next step is to place objectives. So, and there's objective placement now in 3 out of 6 missions. I think it was just 2 before. And that at least 2 of these involve placing objectives in the middle, or at least 6 inches from your deployment zone. So, and a lot of the secondaries focus on getting some of these no man's land objectives. So objective placement can be key, and since you know where you are in your deployment zone and who's deploying first and everything, you should place your objectives smartly. So keep that in mind. Use the terrain, place your objectives smartly. So this is really advantageous for us, although it's also advantageous for your opponent possibly. So keep that in mind, but that's a big change. And then the secondaries you pick after deployment, who's going first definitively, and after all the objectives are placed. So you may have some idea going into it what objectives secondaries you're going to pick based on your army and your opponent's army, but you got to have that flexibility for what the table is presenting you with the terrain and where the objectives are, because now you have all this information before you pick your secondaries. The other thing that most people don't play this way, or don't realize you're supposed to play this way, or can play this way, is you don't have to tell your opponent what your secondaries are until you both picked. Most people don't do that, but if you're in a competitive tournament, then that is well within your right to not reveal your secondaries until others have been picked. Especially with things like sappers around these days, it may be advantageous to not tell your opponent that you pick something that's going for those objectives right in front of them. So keep that in mind. Generally, if you're going to go second, you need to decide how aggressive you're going to be. If you're going to go first too, actually, and that you can only base that on terrain and what kind of army your opponent has, because board control will really matter in the new ITC. So people deploy their whole armies, and that's fine. I way prefer that. It's way faster, and that's great. Okay, so secondaries. So secondaries have been split into seek and destroy or kill secondaries, and maneuver or hold secondaries. You have to pick one from each, and then your third secondary can be from either, or you can pick old school. Old school is the same as before. It's unchanged. In terms of the secondaries, so Kingslayer is gone. Now it's just Headhunter, which is unchanged. 4 characters, 1 point for each character. Boom. One of the new secondaries is now called Born for Greatness. This is an interesting objective. So you get, have it here. Hang on a second. So Born for Greatness, you have to pick a single model character unit. So that for us is not a lot of options. Shield Captains and Valoris and Vexilla. So you would probably for this pick a Shield Captain on a bike, because this person over the course of the game has to do 4 out of these following 6 things. Destroy an enemy unit that's a character. Destroy an enemy unit that's not a character. Deny a psychic power. Hold an objective outside your deployment zone. heroically intervene into an enemy, and begin and end a battle round inside your opponent's deployment zone. So really the only person that could do that is a shield captain on bike. There is potential that you have a shield captain in Terminator armor that you drop down into your opponent's zone. It's pretty hard to screen out one base. And then he gets lucky and doesn't die and accomplishes a few of these things. This is fairly hard to get and really depend on terrain, where the objectives are, and what kind of army your opponent has. If you establish good table control and you're not dying, then your shield captain could probably accomplish 4 out of these 6 things over the course of a game. Of course, you can use the stratagem to deny psychic power. I wouldn't use his warlord trait to get this one secondary point. That's really not a good thing to do, but you could use the 1 CP stratagem to try and deny psychic power, and that would get you automatically a secondary point. But that's still like a CP for secondary point. It's like, so I don't, initially this seems like, oh yeah, shield captain can do this easily. I don't think it's as easy as you think, and you have to heroically intervene, but it's possible. Kill a unit, one or the other, that's 1. Hold an objective outside the deployment zone, that's fairly easy, that's 2. And then near the end of the game, if he's still alive, begin and end in your opponent's zone, that's 3. And then the 4th one is the harder one, character or intervene or deny a power. So really you're talking 2 to 3 out of 4 under good circumstances. So maybe not the best first pick. But you do have to pick a kill one, so keep that in mind. Okay, Mark for Death is now, instead of 7 power level, it is now 100 points. So this actually, so offensively for us, it's fairly easy. To kill 100 points is not difficult. I would have thought it was going to be higher, like 140 or something like that, but 100 points is not difficult, and so I don't think that changes much for us in terms of Mark for Death and Max. It might be a decent secondary to take. In terms of defensively scoring Mark for Death on us, like our whole army is over 100 points, like every single thing is above 100 points, so everything can be marked, and so that's a little bit bad for us. Depending on your army though, it may be hard or easy to achieve. So just to bring up this stratagem, Unleash the Lion. So if you have an Alaris unit and it's been marked for death, if you split it as it says in Mark for Death, now they have to kill every Alaris to get that 1/4 of their Mark for Death. So that just makes it a little bit harder for them. We're going to talk more about Unleash the Lion's stratagem coming up. So I think that Mark for Death is definitely one that a lot of people end up taking against us now, and for us to use, actually it's a decent one for us to take against other people too. So I like Mark for Death. So Titan Slayers and Big Game Hunter have literally just been changed 2 hours ago to I don't know what it's called now. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. Actually, I have it up here. It is now called, it's still called Big Game Hunter. They got rid of Titan Slayer, and now it's just 1 point for every 10 wounds done to vehicle, monster, or Titanic keyword. So, basically they combined Big Game Hunter and Titan Slayer into just 10 wounds, every 10 wounds. So, offensively, that's probably fine. I mean, if you're, say you have to kill 3 tank commanders to get 3 points before, now 3 tank commanders will get you 4 points. So that's fine. Before you had to kill, more knights, and now you just need to do 40 wounds. So I guess that's better. Against us, the same thing. So instead of killing 3 Custodes tanks and a palace, now they just have to kill 3 Custodes tanks to get 4 points. So it works both ways. I don't think it's going to be a huge swing either way, but it is a little change and just makes the secondary thing a little bit better. They kind of seemed a bit redundant. And then you had to keep it. Then you had to count which ones counted for Titan and which one would count for Big Game, and this. So that was a lot of bookkeeping. So I think this is just better. Gangbusters. Okay, Gangbusters changed in that now you cannot pick troop units. So this is huge. Defensively for us, this is huge. Guardians no longer give up gangbusters. So that's really big. Everything else on our army still gives up gangbusters, but Guardians don't. So that is really good. So running large Guardian bombs is another reason to run Guardian bombs as opposed to some of our elite choices. But Guardians not giving up big game is big. And the other thing is, it calls out that they have to inflict it on non-troop role multi-model units. So you can split your Alaris unit with Unleash the Lions, and they are now no longer a multi-model unit, and they will no longer give up Gangbuster. So that's another thing you can do with Unleash the Lions now. So that's cool. Offensively, I mean, fine. So, I think this makes it harder to take away things like breachers and things like that. But generally, it's probably about the same for us to get Gangbuster. The kinds of things we were getting Gangbusters off before is kind of the similar sort of things we're getting Gangbuster off now. So fine. But defensively, it's a big change for us. Butcher's Bill is unchanged. 2+ models gets you a point. And the Reaper now is... for every 2 wounds done to infantry models only, you get a point. For every 20 wounds done to infantry models, you get 1 point. So this was made for intercessors, basically, let's face it, for Marines. And this, at first I thought that this really affects us, but really if you think about it, the number of wounds we have, it's kind of like tabling us anyway, so it's a win more secondary for the person. So I think it doesn't really affect us either way, and it gives us options to take Reaper against armies where we would not have taken it before. So before you would only take it on like Horde armies. Now you could take it on basically any army and do pretty well with it, I think. So definitely a candidate for your kill secondary is Reaper now. Okay. So that is basically... yes, Bridgar, or is that Bridger? I don't know if it is Bridger. Hey, Bridger. Yeah, so I think more, as he says, that people will be taking Marked against us and Reaper. Yeah, I think because it's going to be a win more secondary, so Marked would be a better one for us. Assume most of your Psychic Awakening wish list comes true and the ITC missions don't change. What would your initial thoughts on a list look like? We're going to talk about that at the end, Thurgood. Hey, Bridger. It is Bridger. Welcome. So Bridger's list we'll talk about it at the end, but Bridger's list just got better. If completely unchanged, the missions have made it better. But we'll talk about it at the end. Snoop DeVille, welcome. Okay, now we'll talk about the hold secondaries or maneuver secondaries. So, of course, you have to pick one of these at the minimum. There's been some big changes here, so we'll go through that. Recon is the same, basically, so you get a point for a unit in each quarter, and they have just changed it a couple of hours ago. If you get 2 units in each quarter, you now score 2 points. But now it's only from turn 2 onwards. So before a couple of hours ago, it was from the first turn, and so people were maxing their secondaries by the second turn, which is crazy. So for sure, all these secondaries that we're going to talk about, where you score 2 points for having double the amount of units holding things, they're now from turn 2 onwards to kind of slow down the secondary rate. So recon now potential to score all your recon by turn 3. Behind enemy lines is basically the same, except they've made it so that flyers cannot do it. So flyer battlefield role cannot do it behind enemy lines. And 1 unit entirely in the enemy zone gets you a point. 3 units gets you 2 points. Yes. So that's another one. Ground control is unchanged. 1 point for every objective at the end of the game, except in the one mission 3, I think with only 3 objectives, you get 4 points if you hold all 3. So they just put that little thing in there just to even out for mission 3. Okay, one of the big changes is King of the Hill. So King of the Hill was rarely taken before, really hard to score. It still is, unless you've got a magic box sitting right in the middle of the table. But given that a lot of the missions have a middle objective now, I don't think we're going to be seeing magic bosses right in the middle of the table. Technically, you can't do that in ITC. So basically, at the end of your turn, if you have 2 non-character multi-model units wholly within 9 inches. Let me just check the most up to date, see if they've changed this, because some people are complaining about this. So it's still wholly within 9 inches of the center of the table. Okay, so then you score 1 point. If you have 4 units wholly within 9 inches of the middle of the table, you get 2 points. And it goes out to specifically call out multi-model units as units that started the game as multi-model units. So the thing is to take an Alaris unit of a minimum of 4 dudes, split them with Unleash the Lions, and now in 2 turns you could max King of the Hill. So that's kind of cool. As I say, it's still fairly hard to hold the middle of the table these days. They don't become characters, so they can be shot, although now you make the opponent make a few target priority decisions, and you lose one and you lose the trick. Of course, you could have other units in the middle of the table, of course, too. But generally, this involves exposing yourself, trading primary points, possibly kill and kill more, in a deny-style army to get secondary points. So you have to really use this secondary carefully. The whole point of our army is to deny, kill, and kill more, and so by putting 4 dudes out there, you might well be screwing yourself over. So keep that in mind, but it is an option of hold secondary. I think the other options are better, so I actually now don't see myself doing that very often unless there's for some reason, uneven terrain set up and there's a big rune that just blocks my dudes and I can just stand in the middle. But I think it's unlikely. In some tournaments, though, you may find that the 2 runes in the middle of the table are kind of close together, and by standing in the rune, you are inside 9 inches, so that might be definitely a time to use this. Okay, Engineers is basically unchanged, except now if you have an Engineer unit on 2 objectives, one of which has to be outside your deployment zone, you get 2 points. And as they've now just clarified, that can be from turn 2 onwards only. Engineers was always turn 2 onwards only. Let me just see that. Starting from battle round 2, blah, blah, blah. If you have 2 engineer units performing this role, you earn 2 points. Okay, so for engineers, they didn't change it because it was already from battle round 2. So engineers is basically unchanged. Going from 6 inch to 9 inch, yeah, that was a big change for King of the Hill as well, because 6 inch is pretty hard to get in. 9 inches, so if you're using the top 100 LVO tables, those runes are pointed 9 inches away from the middle, so technically you're not wholly within by being behind the runes, but you're fairly close. So, but in other tournaments where they're not using that terrain, you might have the 2 runes, there might be the middle, and then the 2 runes are pretty close together, and you could easily be within 9. So so they'll have to watch out for that at Nova and stuff like that. Maybe they'll have to measure 9 inches from the middle so people don't just instantly score King of the Hill 4 times. So Engineers is the same. It's still a good secondary for us to take, especially with Guardian units. And so something to keep in mind. And if you can have a unit on 2 objectives, you can score that double fast. Okay, new secondary is Sappers. So I don't personally like this secondary. I think it's messy, and there's going to be tons of interactions that people have never thought about. But there is, we'll go through it. So basically, you have to select 2 non-character, non-fortification, non-flyer units, and they're the Sappers. And basically, if they end the movement phase within 3 inches of an objective, they sap that objective, and it becomes unscorable to your opponent only. So they can't hold it, they can't score primary or secondary off of it. So that's actually super strong. And in order to get you off it, they have to make you do something like attack. So if they charge you, you have to attack, or get you off it by destroying you. And then you can, for each objective that you sapped, you can score a point, and up to 2 per turn. So that is pretty strong. Let me see if they made it from turn 2. Starting turn 2 onwards, you can earn a maximum of 2 points for 2 or more objectives. Yeah. So they decreased that a little bit. So people were doing sapping and engineering and just scoring all their secondaries in 1 or 2 turns. So they increased that. So, and the important thing is you can score sappers even if you do not control the objective. Okay, so that is key. So moving our OPSEC guys onto a sapped objective does not get it back for us. Of course, then we just charge them and then that turns it off. But so that is key. You have to keep that in mind. So if we have a unit though, and we are OPSEC, and we can get onto a objective like that, then that could be something that we could use. So that is something to keep in mind, and we're fairly hard to budge. And generally, people don't want to charge us, but so sappers may be something that we could use or build around. Again, with Guardians, probably the best candidate to be sappers because they can 3-up invuln and they don't give up gang, and big units are fairly hard to kill. So I think we're looking at another possible use for Guardian units, sappers. Okay, the final one, I really like this one, although I think it's poorly named, is the Postman. So the Postman, basically single model from your army that is not a vehicle, monster, or Titanic. And basically this model has to fly around and hit and stand on 4 different objectives. It has to control. So that has to control each objective, and 4 different ones over the course of the game, and then gather intel from each, and then you get your point. Actually, if it's Postman, it should be delivering intel, but anyway, that's a small thing. So if you're trying to think about things that could be postmen, comes to mind obviously shield captains. That's probably the only postman that we have. Now, it doesn't have to be a isolated single model. It can be a model in a unit. So if you have a 5-6 man bike unit, you could pick one of those bikers so it could last a little bit longer. So I think 2 candidates for us if you're choosing postman would be a single biker in a biker unit or a shield captain on bike. I think a shield captain is better because you can protect it from characters. It's fairly hard to kill, and you might be able to get around to 4 objectives. And keep in mind, you can't use the same objective that you also use for engineer or sapping or something. So you cannot stack those things. So it could be quite difficult to do. I think this is really a situational one that you pick based on your opponent's army, where the terrain is, and where the objectives are. But it could be good. So Bridger says that the sapper is pretty easy to abuse. Yes, and I think the ability to turn things off even if you don't control the objective is too good. It's too abusive. So yeah. So I don't actually like sappers at all, and I think it's gonna have to get changed. Thurgood Grey Knight's 3-inch deep strike strat would be awesome. Yes. As would Homering. And Jacob Smith, you agree, manipulate sappers pretty well. Yeah. So Postman. I'm going to try Postman tomorrow night because I'm playing Seer Council, and Dangerous Dave is the perfect Postman. Okay. If people have got questions or comments about the secondaries, please post them up. We're going to move on now to the actual missions, and I'm going to pull them up here, just so people can see the maps for the ones that have maps now. All right, so this is scenario 1, which is Seize Ground. This is it's basically unchanged in terms of the placement of the 6 objectives. So Snoop DeVille, you just go to the ITC page, Champions Missions. They're all the updated ones now. So nothing here has changed except for the bonus. So now the bonus, you get it for holding any 4 objectives. So that's definitely easier. So all the bonuses are easier to get now, and so this is definitely easier for, maybe not for us, but for other armies. That, and especially depending on deployment type, this could be really easy to get the bonus first turn and to keep getting it. So this is a bit of a bad thing for us. As I said, board control armies are going to really find these bonuses easy to get these days, so they could probably give up a few secondary points and not worry too much about it because they're getting bonus all the time. So that is Seize Ground, mission number 1. All right, mission number 2 is Cut to the Heart. Cut to the Heart is the same, basically. There's one objective in the middle, and then the players place an objective in their deployment zones, but now the bonus is holding the middle and your own objective, which is way easier to score for us as well. So depending on if you go first or second, getting onto that middle objective will get you the bonus, basically. So this could swing either way depending on who you're playing against and whether you're going first or second, but it's a very easy bonus to score these days, so keep that in mind. All right, mission 3. Mission 3 is Nexus Control. Nexus Control is 4 objectives now. First 2 are placed in no man's land, 6 inches away from deployment zone, and then the other one in the deployment zone. And the bonus is now you have to hold the 2 no man's land objectives. So again, smart objective placement will help you hold one of these probably if you put it minimum, just the minimum 6.0001 microns away from your deployment zone, maybe in a rune or something. So that'd be nice. And so this could be a swing in terms of who gets the bonus or doesn't get the bonus. And then also that opens up things like engineers to use because you have an objective just outside within movement range of your deployment zone. So definitely a mission that we could do. Mission 3. All right, mission 4. What's yours is mine. So what's yours is mine is 5 objectives. One's in the middle, and then an objective anywhere on the table, and then an objective in the opponent's deployment zone, and you have to put control the objectives that you place. So this mission is basically unchanged. Yeah. So nothing too different. Hard to get the bonus on this mission. Okay, mission 5 is Precious Cargo. So this is now 5 objectives. But so I think it was 4 before, but now it's 5 with 1 in the middle. And again, you select a priority objective, and then you can move it, and that can't be the middle one. And then if you hold your opponent's priority, you score the bonus. Now there's an extra, if you hold any 3 objectives, you also score the bonus, so that's a lot easier to do now. So again, another easy scoring bonus mission here for certain armies. Be harder for us because of how far apart the objectives are, but tank armies could probably do it. So another one where you potentially have bonus. And also, depending on the deployment zone, you may be easier to get things like engineers and stuff like that, the double engineers. So that's a change for mission 5. And then mission 6 is basically unchanged. Crucible of Champions is completely unchanged, and the bonus condition is completely unchanged. So I think people generally liked that mission. So that is it. That is our rundown of the new ITC missions and how we could adapt. So the question on the floor was, what kind of list would you play now? Well, it's hard to say for sure. It's just theorizing. Haven't done a lot of playing. As I warned before, I think it's important not to build too much for secondaries and at the loss of primaries. So you have to remember our primary way of playing still at this point is hide and seek and denying kill and kill more. And now it's just going to be harder to win the primary because of bonus and easy bonuses. So that's a little bit made it harder for us. I think Guardians are definitely something people should consider. I think this makes the case for Battalion even higher now. And a list like Bridgers, which is basically double Battalion, so all Guardians basically, will not give up very many secondaries. So other than Mark for Death, like not giving up Gang, it's getting tabled to get Reaper, so that's actually an interesting list. If you do run the elites, so the Terminators, the Wardens, the Alaris, then probably 6 or 7 dudes to not give up full gang in one unit. And then possibly if you have the Alaris, good use of Unleash to deny. Thinking about things like King of the Hill, so there's options there in terms of how to play it in terms of that kind of list. The other option, of course, is just to run straight mech, 3 tanks, 6 tanks, Orions, Ares, and so you give up big game, and that's about it. You might give up Reaper. No, it's infantry, so you don't give up Reaper. So that's actually an interesting list these days, and it has plenty of firepower to get you your kills. Of course, there are a lot of things that kills vehicles these days as well. So if we go through just some of the lists I've been cogitating in my head, I don't know how good any of these things are right now, but we'll go through it. So I've got one version of the list, which is a captain, which is Valoris, and 2 shield captains now. So having an extra shield captain for the possibility of doing Postman. And then I have a battalion of shield guardians with 1 unit being 7 dudes for guardian bombs, sappers, engineers, all sorts of reasons to have guardian bomb now. I have a basic unit of 4 Alaris Terminators for some Unleash shenanigans, or possibly just for other shenanigans, movement shenanigans, or a surgical strike into the opponent's backfield behind enemy lines, things like that. So obviously if you drop a unit of 4 Alaris into your opponent's deployment zone and you unleash, that's going to get you 2 points for behind enemy lines. And if you hit them in a back rune somewhere that they left open for you, that's just giving you free points there. A Warden unit of 7 guys, which I either like or don't like. I haven't decided, but still need a hammer. And then the Vexilla and with the Magnifica. So I haven't played the Ares ever, but people have been doing okay with the Ares in the setting of overload, like tank overload, so mech list, so lots of tanks, so 3 Gladius, 3 Palace, Ares or Orion, and minimal other stuff. So I think if you're just running a list like mine and then you're throwing an Ares in there, it doesn't really synergize very well, and it probably just gets blown out of the sky. So that's my version 5A list, basically, which is the kind of trying to play the game type Custodes list. Then I have this list just has 2 tanks. Don't like that list. And then I have the mech list, basically, which is just not really trying to play the game, just trying to blow your opponent away. 2 shield captains, salvo launchers, 1 unit of shield guardians for possible engineers or sapping. 2 Palace tanks, so they only have 2. I don't have 3. 3 Gladius tanks and an Ares gunship, and I had enough points to throw a Telemon in there as well, just for funsies. Obviously, you can replace that 272 points with whatever you like, probably a 3rd Palace and maybe a Achilles or another Guardian unit or something like that. So that is definitely the kind of meme mech list that would probably do fairly well, and if you're lucky and you miss some matchups, you might actually win a GT with that, a small GT with that. So those are kind of the lists that we're throwing around right now. We will definitely see, as the problem is the missions are constantly changing right now until at least the 28th. So don't get too settled, and it's a bit of a pain right now if you're going to events in the next couple of weeks, because they're constantly changing and nobody wants to play old missions. So I feel for you if you have such a situation, but can't really settle on a proper list right now because it's constantly changing. But you can certainly get your fingers wet and get your feet wet and try and play some of these. Jacob Smith, you run 6 tanks with jet bikes, debating on trying to Venatari to handle magic boxes. Well, it depends on how many magic boxes you're going to face. In some parts of the world, they don't have such things as magic boxes. So if you're not going to face magic boxes, you don't need to run a substandard unit like Venatari to handle magic boxes. Like 4 Alaris Terminators would handle magic boxes better than Venatari. So, yeah. Yeah. I do actually like jet bikes now more than I did before LVO. I think the mobility and board control that they give us may well be key. They are our toughest unit, keep in mind. T6, 4 wounds. They're our toughest unit, but they are also our most expensive unit. So, but the mobility and the amount of space you can take up with a bunch of bikes may well be a way forward for unless you're running Bridger's list. So I have a couple of lists in my head with bike units making a comeback, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Right now, it's really difficult to tell because the missions are always changing. But I think bikes may be making a comeback. So we'll see. And then, of course, there's the book looming on the horizon. I don't think we're in this book with the orcs and the space wolves, but it'd be interesting to see whether the next book has us or whether the next book will be the AdMech book. Who knows? So, yeah. Have I run the Forge World jet bikes? No, I have not. They're still horribly expensive. And I don't think they're the most efficient way of getting that kind of firepower. In fact, if you're going to buy 3 of those bikes, which is like 300 and something points, like you could run like Caladius, you could run so many other things with that kind of firepower, and where you don't necessarily need the mobility just to stand there and shoot. You could almost run an Ares with that, and that thing has definite anti-vehicle firepower. So yeah, I still don't rate those bikes, but as I say, it's a free world right now. People should try all sorts of things. Bring your punchy Telemons out, give it a go. You never know. And the meta's kind of shifting too. Grey Knights is really throwing a wrench in the meta right now. Tau with their new custom traits is going to make a comeback. I haven't heard too much noise on the Thousand Suns side yet, but we'll see. And even Marine lists are changing now because people are kind of anticipating an incoming nerf to the whole Leviathan thing. So I think the meta is changing at the same time as the missions are changing. And books are continually coming out. So I think these are definitely things to keep an eye on. Everything is really in flux right now. Big Game Hunter switching to 10 wounds really hurts Palace tanks. Yeah. Big Game Hunter switching to every 10 wounds. Hurts. Now that you think about it, getting 0 points from killing Palace tanks was really good. So I'm not sure what you mean, Bridger, in terms of that they were killing other stuff, so killing your palace didn't get them anything. Because they were under whatever the previous yeah. So yeah, the Big Game Hunter thing does, and it also means they only have to kill 3 Gladius tanks to get their 4 points now instead of killing 4 vehicles. So it does put another wrench into the triple Caladius type thing, but I still think just the firepower from that list of being so efficient is still a decent thing. Jacob Smith have been trying them out here and have won with them. If you're referring to Palace, then sure. But they are easy to kill and now very easy big game. They were even easier big game than they were before. They will potentially, though, get you those 4 recon or recon points easily within the first 3 turns, but as I say, giving up primary to score secondary, generally not a good trade. And these days, with the amount of vehicle killing there is out there, Palace tanks just don't last. You'll see tomorrow, Jean's list could literally kill all of our tanks in probably 2 turns. So Venatari, yeah. I'm not convinced with Venatari. They need slight tweaking to convince me to use them. But yeah, we're talking about getting tougher, and now we're talking about taking 3-up save dudes. So yeah. But I do like the ignore AP rule. I think just the whole army needs that, and then they might be better. Okay. my throat is starting to hurt, so I'm going to stop talking. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And I hope you enjoyed our run-through of these topics. And thank you very much. Do subscribe and follow us here on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. And do join up on the Discord, the Custodes Discord. The link is right there. And if you need it, you can message me for sure. And consider joining our ever-growing community of Custodes players gathering by the warmth of the fire, trying to survive until we get some help. So do join our community. And join me tomorrow night for a game, Guard and Blood Angels versus Eldar. So see you.